I learned exactly how far my HOA president would go to enforce her petty rules when she showed up at my door demanding I heat her apartment during the coldest week Portland, Oregon had seen in 20 years. My name is Victor Ramsey, and I had been living in the Riverside Heights townhouse complex for about 3 years when this whole disaster started unfolding. I worked from home as a software developer, which meant I needed reliable power and heat more than most people. That is why I had invested in a backup generator and a propane heating system 2 winters ago after a bad ice storm knocked out power for 5 days. The generator sat in my small backyard, connected to my electrical panel through a proper transfer switch that I had paid an electrician $3,000 to install correctly. It was not the cheapest setup, but living in the Pacific Northwest, you learn to prepare for the unexpected. The complex itself was divided into 2 buildings. Building A, where I lived, was the older structure built in the 70s with solid construction and individual utility hookups. Building B was newer, constructed about 10 years ago with a centralized heating system and shared electrical infrastructure that the HOA controlled. I had specifically chosen Building A because I liked having control over my own utilities and systems. The HOA president, Patricia Henderson, lived in Building B along with about 30 other residents. She was exactly what you would picture when someone said, HOA Karen, with her blonde highlighted hair always styled in that speak to the manager cut, her pastel cardigans, and her clipboard that she carried around like a weapon. Patricia had been president for 6 years and treated the position like she was running a small dictatorship rather than a residential community. I had relatively few interactions with Patricia until that January. I paid my dues on time, kept my lawn maintained, and did not paint my door any unapproved colors. I thought I was staying under her radar just fine. Then the winter storm hit. The Weather Service had been warning about it for days. An Arctic blast was sweeping down from Canada, and Portland was going to get slammed with ice, snow, and temperatures that would drop below 0 for the first time in decades. I spent the days before the storm hit making sure my generator was serviced, my propane tanks were full, and I had plenty of supplies. I even offered to help my elderly neighbor in Building A, Mrs. Chen, by checking on her heating system and making sure she had enough food. The storm arrived on a Tuesday night. I watched from my window as the freezing rain started coating everything in ice. The temperature dropped fast, and by midnight, the snow started falling heavy and thick. I woke up Wednesday morning to a winter wonderland that would have been beautiful if it was not so dangerous. The power was still on, but I could see crews from Portland General Electric already out working on lines that were sagging under the weight of ice. I was on a video call with my team around 2 in the afternoon when the lights flickered. I had just enough time to save my work before everything went dark. The heater stopped, my computer monitors went black, and the only sound was the wind howling outside. I waited about 30 seconds, then heard my generator kick on automatically. The lights came back, the heat resumed, and I was back in business within a minute. This was exactly why I had spent the money on a proper setup. The power did not come back on for the rest of the complex. I could see through my window that every other unit was dark. Building B across the parking lot looked especially cold and dead. I figured it would be a few hours at most before the utility company got things running again. By Thursday morning, the power was still out everywhere except my place. The temperature outside had dropped to -5 degrees, which was absolutely brutal for Portland. I was working at my desk, nice and warm, when I heard aggressive knocking on my door. Not polite knocking. The kind of knocking that demanded immediate attention. I opened the door to find Patricia standing there with 2 other HOA board members, Sharon Mitchell and Linda Crawford. All 3 women looked furious despite being bundled up in heavy coats. "Victor, we need to talk," Patricia said, pushing past me into my house without being invited. The other 2 followed her in. "Good morning to you too," I said, closing the door behind them. What can I do for you? Patricia looked around my living room, her eyes narrowing as she saw my lights on, my computer running, and felt the warm air. How do you have power? I have a generator, I said simply. Installed it 2 years ago. We know that, Sharon said. She was shorter than Patricia, rounder, with gray hair and a perpetual scowl. The whole complex can hear it running. It is not that loud, I countered, and it is legal. I got all the permits, had it professionally installed, and it meets all codes. Patricia held up her clipboard. She actually had her clipboard with her, in the middle of a historic winter storm. According to HOA bylaws, Section 12, Paragraph 4, any installation that affects the community requires HOA approval. I got approval, I said. 3 years ago, I have the paperwork if you want to see it. Patricia's jaw tightened. That is not why we are here. Building B2K's central heating system is out. It requires electricity to run the pumps and controls. Our residents are freezing. I am sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. Have you called the utility company about getting power restored? Of course we have, Linda snapped. She was the youngest of the three, maybe in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. They said it could be 3 to 5 days before they get to our section of the grid. Some major transmission lines are down. I whistled low. That is rough. You might want to open the emergency shelter at the community center downtown. I think they were opening warming centers. We have another solution, Patricia said, and I immediately did not like her tone. You are going to share your power with Building B. I stared at her. Excuse me. You heard me. You have power, we do not. As part of this community, you have an obligation to help other residents. My generator powers my townhouse, I explained slowly. It is not set up to power anything else, and it does not have the capacity to run an entire building. Then you will let residents come stay here, Patricia declared. We can rotate people through. A few hours at a time to warm up. No, I said flatly. Patricia's face turned red. No, I am not running a warming center out of my home. I have work to do, I need my space, and there are actual warming centers set up for emergencies like this. This is unacceptable, Sharon said. You are being selfish and cruel. I am being realistic, I corrected. My generator barely handles my own power needs. If I start letting people in and out constantly, the temperature will drop. I will use more propane trying to keep up, and I will not be able to do my job. Which I need to do because, unlike some people, I actually have to work for a living. That might have been a low blow, but I was getting annoyed. Patricia did not work, surviving on alimony from her ex-husband according to the complex gossip. The HOA can mandate this, Patricia threatened. We have the authority to require residents to support emergency measures. Show me where in the bylaws it says you can force me to let strangers into my home or share my personal property, I challenged. Because I have read them and that is not in there, Patricia sputtered. Linda looked uncertain, Sharon just glared. We will be calling an emergency board meeting, Patricia finally said, and we will be addressing your lack of community spirit. You do that, I said, opening my door. Now, if you do not mind, I have work to do. They left, but I could tell this was far from over. Patricia had that look in her eye that said she was going to make this her personal mission. I had seen her go after other residents before over much smaller things. There was the guy she fined $500 for having his trash visible from the street. The couple she tried to evict for painting their shutters the wrong shade of blue. Patricia did not lose gracefully. I got back to work, but I could not focus. I kept thinking about the people in Building B. It was dangerous to be without heat in this weather. But my generator legitimately could not power more than my own unit. It was a 15-kilowatt unit, sized specifically for my square footage and appliances. And I was not about to turn my home into a revolving door of cold, possibly sick people during a pandemic winter storm, and while I was trying to work. Around 3 that afternoon, I heard voices outside. I looked out my window and saw Patricia with a small crowd of residents from Building B. They were standing in my front yard, and Patricia was pointing at my house while talking animatedly. Then they started chanting, "Share the heat, share the heat." I could not believe what I was seeing. Patricia had organized an actual protest in front of my house, in sub-zero temperatures. During a blizzard, there were about 15 people out there, all bundled up, some holding signs they had made. One said, "Don't be selfish, Victor." Another said, "Heat is a human right." I grabbed my phone and started recording through the window. If this was going to turn into something, I wanted documentation. The protest lasted about 20 minutes before people got too cold and started dispersing. Patricia stayed the longest, staring at my house with her arms crossed before finally leaving. I watched her trudge back toward Building B, which still sat dark and cold across the parking lot. That evening, my phone started blowing up. The complex had a Facebook group, and Patricia had posted about me. She wrote a long screed about how I was hoarding power while my neighbors froze, how I was violating the spirit of community, and how the board would be taking action. The comments were split. Some people were calling me every name in the book. Others were defending me, pointing out that I had no obligation to share my personal generator and that there were warming centers available. One person, thank goodness, pointed out that Building B-TK's heating failure was actually the HOA's fault. The central heating system had needed upgrades for 2 years, but Patricia had voted against spending the reserve fund money on it because she wanted to use those funds to install decorative lampposts around the complex. That comment got deleted within 10 minutes, but not before several people had screenshotted it. Friday morning brought a knock at my door. This time it was 2 police officers. My stomach dropped. Patricia had actually called the cops on me. "Victor Ramsey?" the first officer asked. He was older, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and a tired expression. "That is me," I said. "We got a call about a welfare check. Someone reported you might be in violation of emergency ordinances by refusing to share power during a declared state of emergency." I took a breath. "Officers, can I show you something?" They followed me to my backyard where my generator sat, running quietly. I explained the whole setup, showed them the permits, and explained the capacity limitations. "Sir, there is no law requiring you to share your personal generator," the younger officer said. He looked like he would rather be anywhere else. "Whoever called this in wasted our time." "I figured," I said, "but I wanted to cooperate fully. Can I ask who made the report?" "We cannot disclose that," the older officer said, but his expression told me everything I needed to know. After they left, I was furious. Patricia had weaponized the police against me over her own failures. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Building B-TK's heating crisis was entirely preventable. The HOA was responsible for maintaining that system, and they had neglected it. I started doing research. I pulled up the HOA meeting minutes from the past 3 years, which were public record for residents. Sure enough, the maintenance director had recommended upgrading Building B-TK's heating system in 2023. The quote was for $38,000. Patricia had argued against it, saying the system was fine and the money should go toward beautification projects. She had won the vote 3-2. Then in 2024, the system had failed briefly during a cold snap. The repair was Band-Aid level, just getting it running again rather than doing proper upgrades. Another recommendation for full replacement, this time with an emergency backup system. Quote for $52,000. Patricia again voted it down, this time wanting to use reserve funds to repave the parking lot. The parking lot repaving had happened last summer. It was completely unnecessary. The parking lot had been fine. So now, Building B was sitting in a crisis that Patricia herself had created through her own mismanagement and vanity projects. Saturday morning, the power was still out. I ventured outside to check my generator and propane levels. I had enough to last another week at my current usage rate, maybe 10 days if I was conservative. The cold was brutal. Every breath hurt. The snow was piled high and more kept falling. Mrs. Chen from the unit next to mine came outside, wrapped in about 3 coats. "Victor, dear, are you doing okay? I am fine, Mrs. Chen. How are you holding up? Oh, I am managing. My daughter came and picked me up yesterday. I am staying with her in Beaverton until the power comes back. She looked worried. Patricia came by before I left. She is very angry with you. I noticed, I said dryly. She is planning something, Mrs. Chen warned. I have lived here long enough to know that. Look, you watch yourself. I will. You stay warm and safe. After she left, I could not shake the feeling that Mrs. Chen was right. Patricia was not the type to let this go. She had been embarrassed by my refusal and called out on social media for her poor management. She would want revenge. I did not have to wait long to find out what form that revenge would take. Sunday afternoon, I was working on debugging some code when my generator suddenly cut out. The house went dark and silent. My computer died. The heat stopped. I grabbed my phone and went outside to check the generator. Someone had cut the fuel line. Clean slice, looked like it was done with bolt cutters or heavy shears. Propane was venting out, though I had already turned off the tank when I saw what happened. This was not an accident. This was not weather damage. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my generator. I took pictures of everything, then called the police. This was not a welfare check or a noise complaint. This was property destruction and potentially reckless endangerment. Cutting a propane line could have caused an explosion or fire. The same 2 officers from Friday showed up. This time, they were much more serious. Who has access to your backyard? The older officer asked. Just me, I said. The fence is locked. Someone would have had to climb over. Any cameras? No, I never thought I would need them. They took my statement and photos. We will file a report. Do you have any idea who might have done this? I hesitated. I did not have proof, but I also was not stupid. I have been having issues with the HOA president. She has been demanding I share my generator with other residents. The younger officer wrote that down. We will follow up. In the meantime, you should get that line repaired and consider installing security cameras. After they left, I was stuck. The temperature in my house was already dropping. It was -3 outside. I could not repair the fuel line myself safely, and getting a technician out during a winter storm emergency was going to be nearly impossible. I tried 6 different repair companies. Everyone was either closed, not answering, or booked solid with emergencies. Finally, one guy said he could come out Monday afternoon, maybe, if the roads were passable. That was more than 24 hours away. I had to make a choice. I could go to a warming center, which would mean leaving my house vulnerable to further sabotage and possibly freezing pipes. Or I could tough it out with layers and my fireplace. I had a fireplace. It was gas, which meant it needed electricity to run normally, but it had a backup battery system that would let it run for about 48 hours without power. I had installed that backup specifically for situations like this. I turned it on, grabbed every blanket I owned, and set up camp in my living room. It was miserable but survivable. The fireplace kept the immediate area warm enough, though I could feel the cold creeping in from the rest of the house. I wore thermal underwear, 2 pairs of socks, a hoodie, and a winter coat. I looked ridiculous, but I was not freezing. Monday morning, I was woken up by pounding on my door. I struggled out of my blanket nest and answered it to find Patricia standing there with the biggest smile I had ever seen on her face. "Good morning, Victor," she said sweetly. "I heard about your generator troubles. Such a shame. Did you do it?" I asked bluntly. Did I do what? Her innocence was so fake it was insulting. Cut my fuel line. I have no idea what you are talking about. I just came by to let you know that if you need somewhere warm to stay, we have set up a community warming area in Building B. I stared at her. Building B does not have power. Oh, we got a temporary solution. The HOA rented some industrial heaters, propane-powered. We are taking care of our residents. She emphasized the word "our" like a weapon. How are you powering them? They do not need electricity, silly, just propane. We have them set up in the community room. Everyone is welcome. Another pause. Everyone who is a team player anyway. She was taunting me. She had sabotaged my generator and now she was gloating about having heat while I did not. I am fine. I said coldly. And the police are investigating the vandalism to my property. Her smile faltered slightly. Well, I hope they find whoever did such a terrible thing. You really should have security cameras, Victor, for safety. After she left, I called the police again and reported the conversation. The officer I spoke to said they would add it to the report, but without proof, there was not much they could do. The repair technician finally showed up Monday evening. He looked at the cut line and whistled. Someone did not like you. This was deliberate. Can you fix it? Yeah, but it will cost you. I have to replace this whole section, and I have to charge emergency rates for coming out in this weather. Just do it. $800 later, my generator was running again. The heat came back on, and I could finally take off the multiple layers of clothing. But I was beyond angry now. Patricia had crossed a line from petty HOA tyranny into actual criminal behavior. I spent Tuesday gathering evidence. I requested copies of the HOA's financial records, which I was entitled to as a resident. I documented every interaction with Patricia. I posted my side of the story in the Facebook group, including pictures of my cut fuel line. The response was volcanic. Residents started taking sides aggressively. Some people accused me of cutting my own line for attention. Others started questioning Patricia's management and demanding answers about building BTK's heating system. The Facebook group turned into an all-out war zone. Patricia tried to delete posts and ban people who criticized her, but that just made things worse. People started a second Facebook group specifically for residents who wanted to discuss HOA issues without censorship. Wednesday morning, the weather finally started to warm up slightly. We were up to 15 degrees, which felt tropical compared to the negative temperatures. The utility company was making progress on power restoration. Building A got power back around noon, Building B did not. I was not sure what was going on until I saw utility trucks parked in front of Building B. Workers were examining the transformer and shaking their heads. Through the complex's social media, I learned that Building BTK's main electrical panel had failed. Not just lost power, but actually failed. The surge when they tried to restore power had fried something critical. It was going to be days, maybe a week, before they could get the parts and fix it properly. Patricia's temporary heating solutions suddenly became much less temporary, and those rental heaters were expensive. Someone posted that the HOA was paying $3,000 a day for the heater rental. Thursday afternoon, I got a notice on my door. Emergency HOA meeting Friday night, mandatory attendance. The agenda included special assessment for emergency repairs and equipment. I knew exactly what this meant. Patricia was going to try to make everyone pay for her heating rental costs and Building BTK's electrical repairs. The repairs that were needed because she had deferred proper maintenance for years. Friday evening, I joined about 40 other residents in the complex's small community center. The building had power again, which was good because it was standing room only and we needed the heat. Patricia sat at a table at the front with Sharon and Linda. The other two board members, both from Building A, sat looking uncomfortable. Patricia called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we have been dealing with an unprecedented emergency. Building B has been without power and heat for 6 days now. Whose fault is that? Someone yelled from the back. Patricia ignored them. The HOA board has acted swiftly to protect our residents. We have rented emergency heating equipment and are working with the utility company on repairs. However, these emergency measures are costly. The total expense is expected to be approximately $30,000. The room erupted. People started shouting questions and complaints. Patricia banged a gavel. Order. The board is proposing a special assessment of $500 per unit to cover these emergency costs. Absolutely not, I called out. This emergency was preventable. The board was warned about Building BTK's heating system and chose not to upgrade it. That is not relevant to the current situation, Patricia said sharply. It is completely relevant. Another resident shouted. A man I recognized from Building B named Eric stood up. You spent reserve fund money on decorative lampposts and parking lot repaving instead of critical infrastructure. Now you want us to pay for your mistakes. The board makes decisions in the best interest of the community, Sharon said. Then the board made bad decisions, Eric countered. I have been freezing for a week because you people did not want to spend money on heating systems. This is not productive, Patricia said. We need to address the current financial reality. I want to see the financials, I said. Full accounting of reserve fund expenditures for the last 3 years. That information is available to residents upon written request, Linda said. I made a written request 3 days ago. I have not received anything. Patricia's face tightened. We have been busy managing an emergency. Convenient, I said. How about you explain to everyone here why you voted against heating system upgrades twice? Once in 2023 and again in 2024. The room got very quiet. People started looking at Patricia with new suspicion. Those are board decisions made with full information, Patricia said. We cannot approve every maintenance request or we would never stop spending money. It was not just a maintenance request, it was a safety-critical system, I pressed. And now that system has failed and you want everyone to pay for your negligence. I move that we table this special assessment until a full financial audit is conducted, said Tom Foster, one of the board members from Building A. Second, called out at least 5 people. Patricia looked furious. That will take weeks. Then it takes weeks, Tom said. We are not voting on a special assessment without full transparency. The meeting devolved from there. Eventually, Patricia had no choice but to table the vote, but she made sure everyone knew she blamed me for the delay. As people filed out, she cornered me near the door. You are destroying this community, she hissed. No, Patricia, you did that all by yourself. I am just making sure everyone knows it. You will regret this. Is that a threat? Should I call the police again? She stormed off without answering. Over the weekend, the weather improved significantly. The temperatures climbed up into the 30s, and the snow started melting. Power was restored to most of Portland. Building B's electrical panel was replaced on Saturday, and heat was finally restored to those units. The crisis was over, but the fallout was just beginning. Monday morning, I received the financial records I had requested. What I found was worse than I expected. Patricia had not just deferred necessary maintenance. She had been using HOA funds inappropriately for years. There were charges for meals at expensive restaurants listed as board meetings. Landscaping work done exclusively on her unit charged to the HOA. A complete exterior paint job on Building B that coincidentally started with her unit and only finished about half the building before funds ran out. I was not an accountant, but this looked like embezzlement to me. I compiled everything into a detailed report and sent it to every member of the board except Patricia and her 2 allies. Then I posted a summary in the Facebook group. The response was immediate and explosive. Residents started calling for Patricia's resignation. Some wanted criminal charges. Others demanded their money back. Tuesday evening, there was a knock on my door. This time it was Tom Foster and the other Building A board member, Helen Walsh. Can we come in? Tom asked. Sure. They sat in my living room, both looking serious. We have been reviewing the information you provided, Helen said. She was in her 60s, a retired teacher with gray hair and sharp eyes. This is very concerning. That is putting it mildly, I said. We want to remove Patricia from the board, Tom said, but we need support. It requires a vote of the residents. I will support that, I said immediately. We are organizing a special election. Can we count on you to help spread the word? Absolutely. Over the next 2 weeks, a coalition of concerned residents organized. We gathered signatures, reviewed bylaws, and prepared for a vote to remove Patricia and her 2 supporters from the board. Patricia fought back, sending threatening letters about defamation and claiming everything was a misunderstanding, but the evidence was too clear. When the vote finally happened, it was not even close. Patricia, Sharon, and Linda were removed from the board with over 80% of residents voting in favor of their removal. The new board's first action was to hire a forensic accountant to review the HOA's finances. The full report took 3 weeks, but it confirmed what we suspected. Patricia had embezzled approximately $47,000 over 4 years through fraudulent charges, kickbacks from contractors, and misuse of funds. The board filed a police report. The Portland Police Bureau's white-collar crime unit opened an investigation. I gave a statement about everything that had happened, including the sabotage of my generator. In April, Patricia Henderson was arrested on charges of theft, embezzlement, and criminal mischief. The prosecution had her dead to right with bank records, receipts, and testimony from multiple residents. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney was not interested in going easy on her. The trial happened in September. I testified about the generator sabotage and her campaign of harassment. Other residents testified about the financial misconduct. The forensic accountant walked the jury through every fraudulent expense. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Patricia was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $47,000 plus damages. Sharon and Linda, who had known about some of the financial irregularities but not actively participated, were given probation and banned from serving on any HOA board. The HOA used the restitution money to properly upgrade building BTK's infrastructure, including a backup generator system like mine. We also revised the bylaws to require annual financial audits and term limits for board members. I stayed in my townhouse at Riverside Heights. The new board was competent and reasonable. They actually maintained the property, approved sensible improvements, and treated residents like adults rather than subjects. Mrs. Chen moved back after her daughter assured her the complex was under better management. We had coffee sometimes, and she loved to tell the story of the Great HOA War to anyone who would listen. As for me, I kept my generator maintained and ready. But I also did not have to worry about sabotage anymore. I installed security cameras just in case, but they mostly just recorded squirrels and the occasional delivery driver. The whole experience taught me a lot about standing up for myself and not backing down when someone tries to abuse their authority. Patricia had counted on me being too intimidated or too apathetic to fight back. She had gotten away with her petty tyranny for years because most people just went along with it rather than make waves. But sometimes you have to make waves. Sometimes you have to stand up and say no, even when it is uncomfortable or difficult. Especially when it is uncomfortable or difficult. I never regretted refusing to let Patricia bully me into sharing my generator. It was not selfishness. It was setting boundaries and refusing to be responsible for problems I did not create. Building BTK's heating crisis was not my fault, and it was not my responsibility to fix it at my own expense and inconvenience. Patricia created that crisis through years of mismanagement and greed. She made choices that prioritized her vanity projects over resident safety. When those choices resulted in consequences, she tried to force me to pay the price instead of accepting responsibility herself. The justice system worked the way it was supposed to. Patricia faced consequences for her crimes. The residents got their money back. The complex got proper management and necessary repairs, and I got to keep living in my home with my generator, my heat, and my peace of mind. On cold winter nights, when I hear my generator kick on during a power outage, I think about that week in January, about how close things came to being much worse, about how standing up for myself changed everything not just for me, but for 40 families living in the complex. The generator hums quietly in my backyard, doing exactly what I designed it to do, keeping my home warm and powered during emergencies. I do not regret a single penny I spent on it. I do not regret refusing to share it. And I definitely do not regret making sure Patricia Henderson faced justice for her crimes, Some people called me a hero. I did not see it that way. I was just a guy who refused to be bullied and who had the receipts to prove the bully was corrupt. Sometimes that is all it takes to change things. The complex is better now. People look out for each other because they want to, not because some tyrant demands it. When someone needs help, neighbors actually help instead of being forced to by someone on a power trip. Last winter, when another cold snap hit Portland, building BTK's new backup generator kicked on perfectly. Nobody froze. Nobody fought. The HOA sent out a simple email letting everyone know the backup systems were working and to let them know if anyone needed assistance. That is how it should have been from the beginning. That is what competent, honest management looks like. I still have Patricia's mugshot saved on my phone. Every once in a while, when I am having a bad day, I look at it and remember that justice does sometimes prevail. That standing up to bullies matters. That keeping receipts and documentation can make all the difference. My advice to anyone dealing with HOA tyranny: document everything, know your rights, and do not be afraid to stand your ground. Get evidence. Keep records. Take photos. Save emails. Follow the money if something seems fishy. And maybe, just maybe, invest in a good backup generator. Not because you will have to share it, but because when everything goes wrong, it is nice to have something you can rely on that nobody can take away from you. The Riverside Heights complex never made the news during Patricia's trial. It was too small, too local. Just another case of HOA corruption in a world full of similar stories. But for those of us who lived through it, it was everything. It was the difference between justice and letting someone get away with hurting people. I still live at Riverside Heights. I still work from home as a software developer. My generator still sits in my backyard, ready for the next emergency. But now I have security cameras watching it, proper documentation of everything, and a HOA board that actually gives a damn about doing their jobs right. And somewhere in Oregon's prison system, Patricia Henderson is learning that actions have consequences, that you cannot abuse power forever. That eventually someone will say no and mean it. I was that someone. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. The story of how my HOA president demanded I share my heat, then froze when her own building lost all power, ended with her losing everything. Her position, her freedom, and her reputation. Meanwhile, I kept my heat, my home, and my dignity. Sometimes the good guys actually win. Sometimes standing up to bullies works out. Sometimes justice is not just a word, but something that actually happens. This was one of those times. And I will never forget it.